Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Earlier this week, I was telling you about the information that was shared with me about how Ukraine was able to now get certain equipment all across Dnipro River. And since then, Ukrainians not only established and controlled the area around Krinky, where they held some Bridgehead, but also now Russians are reporting that Ukrainians are assaulting Kazachi Lahiri. Remember that they also are trying to hold control in these villages as well, which paints us a very, very nice picture. So while we see this left bank painted as red, I think a more accurate representation would be saying that this kind of part over here is already slowly but surely is turning into the gray area. And if Ukrainians are able to establish a proper crossing channels over Dnipro River, this could be a really nice staging area for their future advancements. Now, I don't know if that's the plan of the armed forces of Ukraine. We don't know. What I do know, if you haven't seen my video latest on the General Zaluzhny's assessment, where he talks about the fact that the war that it was fought before right now is in a deadlock, and there needs to be a certain changes in how this war is going to be fought. Most notably, he talks about technological advancements in Ukrainian armed forces, which is, I don't think is a completely correct way of saying. I think for us as a Westerners, a more correct way of what he meant would be saying that Ukraine needs to grow certain capabilities in order to overcome challenges that Russia has put in front of them. And in that sense, until that thing has been accomplished, until those capabilities have been raised, Ukraine cannot defeat Russia head on, and Russia cannot defeat Ukraine head on, which leaves only the other option that was working at all times in world's history. Some special tactics, some interesting moves that are not expected by the enemy, where you undermine, strike the enemy where it is not expecting it. And potentially, just potentially, the left bank of Kherson could be this area. So right now, Russians unfortunately haven't published the videos that were shared with me, so I cannot say them. But already some people noticed on some other channels like United 24, where they posted some of the videos of how Ukrainian engineers are training for crossing any kind of water barriers. That gives you already a hint of what I was seeing, but I cannot just talk about it directly yet. All in all, Ukrainians are continuously expanding their presence on the left bank of Kherson. Right now, the question is still if there's going to be a scaled operation over here, but it's definitely something to watch. And what's more important to watch is actually what's happening in Kerch. I usually don't report on this channel about the strikes of missiles, but Russians have reported, and there are plenty of videos of Russians looking of a major, massive combined attack by Ukrainian air forces. Eyewitnesses are reporting that both drones were used as well as a lot of missiles. As we found out later, some of them were dummy missiles and some of the missiles were actually long-range missiles. What was struck is ships that are located in the dock in the area over here. More concretely, one special ship. It was the newest ship in the Russian Black Sea Navy. The ship that was that began building in 2016 by the name of Askold. It's like a smaller type of missile carrier, and just don't be confused by the name. Just because it's smaller, it still has at least 8 slots for caliber types missiles, so it could still do a lot of damage to Ukrainians and Ukrainian citizens and Ukrainian infrastructure. So right now, Ukrainians did a preemptive strike. We don't know the damages because satellite pictures are still not fully out, but if we can judge by the Russian media, there are generally 3 levels of representation of strikes. If there was a strike by Ukrainians and nothing was destroyed outright, usually Russian media just ignores it. Then if there was an attack and potentially there were some damages done, but the damages were not severe. Then Russia says that, hey, we were attacked, but we shut down all of the missiles and nothing happened. However, when Russia says that something is damaged, if we can judge them by the strikes that were done before, then this usually indicates that whatever was hit is pretty much a goner. My hopes is, with no concrete evidence so far, that this ship that got struck by a Scalp missile, which is now confirmed that it was French Scalp missiles, Storm Shadows, the same things, right now is pretty much gone. This is problematic for Russia. Two reasons. First and foremost, because Russians have been experiencing pressure on their ships for a while now. Before that, they were having they had to deal with Ukrainians striking Sevastopol area over here, where they were holding their ships. This was achieved before because Ukrainians were able to put out all of the anti-air from this area over here, and so deny any kind of vision of the sea from this side. Since then, Russian ships were relocated a lot to Novorossiysk, which is located over here, and more towards Kerch and to Feodosia. These are like the major shipyards that are still in southern Crimea. So the problem of Russians, after they said, okay, Sevastopol, not safe, we're not going there, and I already reported that as saying that this is what basically lost Russia their entire left side of the western side of the Black Sea, and allowed Ukraine to establish proper grain trading, get ships into Ukrainian ports, which is a huge victory for Ukraine, for Ukrainian economy. But now, if Russians are being targeted at Kerch, which is located here, that's a problem. Why? Because if you remember what missiles Ukraine was using before, the whole notion of them being used was that their range was about 250 kilometers. And if we just take our measurement stick from here, we put the pin where the strike was, and the closest position ever from the front line is this area over here around Robotine. And let's be honest, no one in Ukraine will fly their plane directly to the line of contact. Usually planes are not flying closer than 20-30 kilometers to the line of contact because anti-air systems are out there. Russian planes are out there just looking for juicy targets. So one of the two things happened. Either it was an amazingly fabulous operation by Ukrainian armed forces. Russians are reported that in total there was 15 missiles. I think they're overestimating, but let's say, I don't know, 10. 10 missiles that were launched by Ukrainian armed forces, and they were taking a huge risk, which I don't really believe Ukrainians would do, but potentially. Or second option, which is potentially worse for Russia, is that these missiles were not launched from the 240 kilometers, as you can see here at the bottom of the screen, but instead, if we add those 20-30 kilometers from the line of the impact, then Ukraine is possessing missiles that can fire for about 300 kilometers. You don't need me to explain you what this means. That means everything that is located in Crimea is now a fair game. That means anything can be struck. And more importantly, if you see where the impact was, if we just zoom in over here, you see that just basically right next to that place where the impact was is the Crimean Bridge. We, by this strike, can completely certainly confirm that now Ukraine has the capabilities to strike Crimean Bridge. And the fact that impact went through most of covered the area where the strike was over here is pretty much the same anti-air systems that are used to protect the Crimean Bridge. This is very damning news for Russia. But coming back to the front line, what else is happening? Well, Ukrainians right now are having a little bit of tactical success around Robotine, which I just need to report on. But again, Remember, for any kind of faster advancements, firstly, I don't see a reason to do so. This is what General Zaluzhny has said. He says that maybe there is no reason to bang their heads. And fair talk. Well, let's talk about this. So these areas were additionally liberated by Ukrainian armed forces, and these were nice tactical gains. We can all celebrate this. But let's not look at these couple of tens of meters. Let's talk about the summer offensive. And in summer offensive, while I still think that, like, in general, it was a failure because now Ukraine has to deal with those stalemate situations and all of these bullshit articles that are being circulated about yada yada, all of that bullshit. While Ukraine was attacking in this direction as Robotine, what you did maybe remember that at first Ukraine was very actively attacking everywhere else at the front line. However, at some point they removed a lot of that pressure. And what is not being told is that Ukraine has actually preserved quite a lot of equipment from that attack. While Ukraine was sending in new vehicles, and this is actually something that was, I felt really bizarre, that because some of the pro-Ukrainian analysts, like military analysts, real analysts, not like me, like a commentator here, but they are saying it's like, oh, Ukraine had a shitty plan, therefore, like, they still had equipment, but they didn't achieve anything. Well, they still have the equipment. Like, the equipment of losses compared to what Ukraine has are very, very relatively small. Ukraine still has plenty of equipment. So my point is that for some reason, everyone is kind of absolutely like a blind spot. I never talked about it because I thought it was so obvious, is that because Ukraine crossed out a lot of these directions and just positioned itself in a defensive stance, just protecting what they gained everywhere besides Robotine, and even Robotine, they never did any kind of massive assaults. That means that Ukraine has preserved a lot of reserves in their backs. So whenever they need to do some certain actions, they still can utilize certain equipment. And I'm not completely sure why is this escaping everyone in the public sphere. Yes, Ukraine did lose a lot of equipment, but it's not like absolutely cosmic amounts that means that Ukraine needs to rebuild their whole military. Absolutely not. Then we go to Avdiivka direction. In Avdiivka situation, I need to be bullshit countering over here, because we've heard certain again analysts, I'm talking it very loosely, that are saying that Russia now firmly controls the railway, that they're now open to attack towards Stepove, that now they're open to attack towards the chemical plant over here. And that's such a, how do you say, manipulative language, because right now what we're seeing is Russia have already been trying for over 2 weeks to attack towards Stepove and towards the chemical plant. Most of what Russia has gained over here is what it got at the initial push when they lost hundreds and thousands of people. That was the beginning phase when they were able to gain some ground. Now, when Ukraine already has attracted reserves, have prepared for this position and expecting additional Russian pushes, these pushes that Russia was doing were already there. So what I'm saying is we should be very accurate. And when someone says, oh, Russia will attack Stepove, or Russia will attack not coke plant, but the chemical plant, we need to understand that chemical plant is a huge defended position. So just the fact that you're moving towards that defensive position doesn't mean that you're going to start attacking it at first, you're going to reach it, and secondly, that it's even going to be fast or even effective. It's not. People, for some reason, they think that as soon as Russia reaches the chemical plant, that's it. That means like a couple of days and Russia will take it or something. Not even close. This position is absolutely fundamentally required for Ukrainians, and they know that. And they will throw a lot of forces just to make sure that Russians don't get there. Now, I still believe that If Russia really wants, if they completely forego any kind of reserves, any kind of activities on the other front lines, they can still throw a lot of resources. And we don't know, right? It's not a cakewalk for Ukrainians down there. It's still hard fighting. But we do know that despite a lot of resources, we now see those resources for Russia being harder and harder to get in the quantities to overcome Ukrainian resistance. Remember the problem of attacking right now into defenders. Right now, I was explaining that we're in about 9-to-1 effective advancement ratios, and that's mostly the open field. So the attacking side needs to have basically 9 times more resources than the defending side, and that's open field. Once we start talking about absolutely fortified and defended positions such as industrial chemical plant that has like full concrete structure, bunkers, underground tunnels, supplies that were brought in there for months, we're talking about many, like in double digits, way into double digits, about what kind of advantage Russia needs to have against the defenders. Again, important, it's not a cakewalk, not easy. A lot of Ukrainians die. A lot of defenders really are having the hard time right now. But it's not doesn't mean that it's going to be easy for Russian. Ukrainians have also have certain tactical gains around the area between Klishivka and Andriivka, but they're super small. So I'm just kind of putting it a check mark. Right now, this is not an advance where we can see certain movements. Moreover, we've heard that Russians tried to do some kind of counterattack from the Klishivka, or not Klishivka, Kurdyumivka area, but again, it's very, very limited. All the Russian movements around the north part, for the most part, like they're still trying to do some tactical maneuvers, but a lot of forces have been moved from the northern part towards Avdiivka to help secure that, to help reinforce that area. And since then, northern side has been not dying down, like, because fighting is happening every day. It's always fighting, it's war. But generally speaking, if we're talking about anything that can potentially alter the situation on the front line, it is now being shifted. Overall, the situation on the front lines soon is going to be even harder for attacking sides, and generally harder. Weather in Ukraine has about 6 days left before it turns to complete mud. It's going to become a rain season for the next maybe month and a half. So we will see a slowdown if previous years is anything to go by. If anything is going to happen, it's mostly going to be like a smaller group assaults. We should not expect any kind of big, major Russian offensive. But Russians are still trying to do certain offensive. And one of the things that I forgot to mention is that Russians tried to do, again, an attack towards Vuhledar with their columns of tanks and infantry fighting vehicles and everything. They got demolished, absolutely burned down. This is the new baseline. Please watch my video when I talk about General Zaluzhny's assessment of this war. It's super important. Again, I'm going to link it somewhere here. Thank you so much for watching this video. I actually had more things here that I wanted to talk about, but I guess I'm just going to have to make another video for you to watch this week. Thank you so much for following this. Thank you so much for supporting Ukraine. Slava Ukraini. Trust in the armed forces of Ukraine. And I'll see you guys next time.